Hi, beautiful, and welcome back to our channel where we chat all things on how to really relax and rest into the loving woman that you are. It is a gorgeous day in Panama to be talking about one of my favorite topics, which is how to really increase that polarity in your relationship, how to increase that draw between a man and a woman in whatever romantic relationship that you are in. So, full disclaimer that I am still exploring right now. I'm just in a spirit of exploring how I feel about the use of the word feminine energy, masculine energy. I used to talk about this quite a bit. And then recently I just feel like it's become a little manipulated, a little overused by people who don't really quite understand it. And I'm just trying to figure out what is the right way for me to explain this topic in a way for you to receive it. But for the purposes of this video, it is helpful to use masculine and feminine energy. And so that's what I'll be using. I hope that you receive it with an open heart and open mind. So to start off here, let's just talk about what is energy polarity. So this idea of energy polarity, right? Polarity in a relationship or romantic relationship, but even in any dynamic, okay, it can exist. It came from the concept of just thinking about a magnet. Every magnet has both a north and south pole. And because these are opposite poles, these poles are attracted to one another. Okay. And so we began to apply this concept to our relationships and specifically our romantic relationships, meaning we now know that there is a masculine energy or a masculine pole and a feminine pole or feminine energy. And when these two energies are operating in their fullness is when there is a heightened level of polarity, meaning attraction to one another. So I like to talk about energy polarity as the energy of the body. It's almost like this intangible draw. It doesn't even need to be explained with words or logic, but you just feel drawn to a person's energy, specifically when they are that reciprocal energy, right? Because it complements you. It's something that you're not always accessing, and it is so captivating and enticing and desirable because it's an energy that complements yours, okay? And so for this specific video, I am going to be talking about how, as a woman, you can lean most into the fullness of your feminine energy or that full feminine pole, if you will, to really have that heightened magnetism between you and a masculine energy partner or your male partner, okay? And so what is the feminine pole and the masculine pole? As a quick recap, I think folks understand it because it is so discussed right now in our society. But essentially, you can think of the masculine pole or that masculine energy as the structured, very driven, very logical version, right? That's the energy of the masculine. Those are the character traits. Versus a feminine has this openness to it. It's very intuitive. It's very in flow. I want to take it a step further. I really believe that the fullness of the feminine is just this glowing radiance. It is just this radiance that beams from the feminine force. And that's why it can show up a lot of different ways, but it is a fullness to me of radiance and just so enticing, not even just to that masculine pole, but to any person. Any person is gravitating towards it, is attracted to the feminine because it's just this beautiful blooming radiance, okay? It doesn't mean that you're always sweet and in a good mood, but it's just this light and this warmth of the feminine. So one analogy that I really love is thinking about the masculine as the bustling city of New York, right? Really just think about New York for a second. If you're familiar with New York, you know, right, that it is hustling, that people are there and they're directed, they're driven. The city can be kind of brutal in a lot of ways, right? It's a city that is marked by its driven nature, by its focus on objectives. Even if you just think about the architecture of New York, right? It is heavily concrete, heavily building, hard and coarse. That is the energy of the masculine. It serves fantastic purpose. It is so driven and so, what is the word, effective and functional in achieving an achievement because of its nature. But on the flip side, The feminine is just embodied by the tropics. And even just to look at my background here in Panama, right? It's green, it's lush, there's warmth to it, not just in temperature, but in the sentiment and the feeling of the feminine. It's radiant and bright, right? So just thinking about the comparison between a city like New York, which is a very masculine city, and then the tropics can really help you understand the energy of the masculine as compared to the feminine. And so maybe one final example here is just thinking about the direction and the weightiness of a cargo ship, right? If a cargo ship is headed in one direction, it's pretty much keeping that direction. It is a sport to try to get it to change direction, right? Really weighty, takes a space, and very focused in the direction that it is pointed. Versus you can think of the ocean, right, that the cargo ship is in as the feminine. It's fluid, it meanders, it can take on any shape and adapt without changing its core essence. And so now with those analogies underway, let's talk about how do you increase this draw, this polarity between the masculine and the feminine energy. You can do this by directly focusing on eliciting more of the masculine from your partner, or you can do this by you leaning more into your feminine. Because my focus and my priority is on you as a woman, we are going to focus on how you can lean and rest more into that feminine pole. And actually by doing so, that in and of itself will elicit more of the masculine. Rather than trying to elicit masculine through force or effort, lean into your feminine, relax into your feminine, like leaning into this side. But leaning into your feminine will naturally draw that masculine energy out of your partner. And it'll feel really good for you if your core essence is feminine, okay? So the first way, and this is the most important, right? For you to have that feminine radiance about you, that brightness about you, that draw that people just have to you because you are you, okay? You have to lean into love. I want you to become the most loving version of yourself, okay? The feminine at her core is love. The feminine is life. It's fruitful. And so when you are in a spirit where you are just open to love, right? You allow yourself to become as close as possible to love. When you are actually in the energy of being loving, right? Being in love. Not necessarily being in love with someone, but you yourself are in love, like you have allowed yourself to relax into love, is when you will always, okay, radiate the fullness of the feminine. I truly believe the feminine at her core is the fullness of love. That is what it is, okay? Whereas the masculine is more the fullness of directionality, of purpose, right? But the feminine and love go together real bad, sweetie, okay? And so if you are someone who's wanting to connect more to that feminine side of you, stop resisting love. Stop allowing yourself to act in unloving ways. We have gotten so misdirected as a society because of our own ego. Lay down your ego and lean into love. And I promise you, you will have this radiance to you. You don't need to worry about these feminine tactics and all of those because you are leaning into the fullness of the feminine, okay? And the cool part about love, and I talk about this in other videos, is you have no shortage of love because we are all connected to God, who is the source of love. And so you can rest assured that you can give love freely and abundantly because you have it in no bound, right? It is boundless, the amount of love that you have, all right? And so maybe at first, because again, we've resisted so much of love as a society, it's going to feel a little wonky to get back into the practice of love. But as you do, I'm telling you, it'll just birth more and more love in you, okay? One thing I will say about this idea of loving and becoming love and giving love, be really careful not to do things because you feel obligated to, okay? Obligation, I don't believe is love. Because when you are bringing the energy of obligation, you're making something feel like a chore. You're making your love feel like a chore for someone to receive it. And that's not the goal, right? So I want you to give love freely, but I also want you to give love honestly. So practice that. Just practice. And I think that you'll find that you are actually a way more loving person. If you're a person who thinks you're not loving, I want to challenge that and tell you, you're probably way more loving than you could have ever imagined. It's just so much of you has been resisting what is your core essence because of our ego, our desire to defend ourselves, protect ourselves, but you do not have to do that, okay? A little bit of a tangent there, but leaning into the fullness of love and becoming really in partnership with love, moving in love. That is my very first and most important tip for you to lean into the feminine. My second tip to lean into the radiance of the feminine is to really allow yourself to experience more joy and more happiness. Our desire for purpose, our desire to achieve, our desire to be driven is beautiful, and it cannot come at the expense of experiencing joy. Just because you don't necessarily have the things or not exactly where you want to be doesn't mean that your life has to be void of joy. I want you to become joy. Look around and wake up. Look how much God has been good to you. Look how much fruit you have in your life. I want your happiness and your joy to become contagious. I want you to be so joyful and so happy that people cannot possibly be around you and be hardened. They can't be around you and feel heavy by this world, right? You bring that light, you bring that warmth in the room when you are one who is with joyfulness. And going back to why this matters so much, and I should have said this about the first one on love, but when we think about joy and also love, right, if that masculine is in the mode of directionality and purpose and vision, right, they are so tunnel vision sometimes, that masculine energy is tunnel vision, that your lightness, your warmth is what brings him back to his heart center, right? It brings him out of that logic and allows him not only to connect with you and be drawn to you, but connect to himself better. And that will naturally allow him to be more drawn to you because now he's feeling more alive, right? So when you bring love into your relationship unconditionally, when you bring love effortlessly, right? Not as a chore, but when you bring it with a lightness about you, when you just can't help but be joyful, right? You bring that masculine energy out of the weight of his duty, out of the heaviness of constantly being on guard and directionality and having to face this world, and you provide that space where he too can just be and rest and rest into you. And that is a beautiful thing. The third way that you can really have that feminine radiance is to connect more with your body. Connect more with your body. What I mean by this is, as women, I've talked about this, really as a society, we are very heady, I call it, right? We live in a phase right now where there's like, what do I call it? Like the podcast era, where everyone has an opinion. You can just turn on your camera, flip it, and start saying something. And so we are constantly intellectualizing things. We're constantly ruminating, okay? But we don't do enough about just like dropping into our body. There are so many beautiful books about the importance of reconnecting with the body, about how smart your body really is, about how much your body is trying to communicate to you, okay, what's going on with you. And you're over here ruminating, right? And so allowing yourself to find ways to reconnect with what 90% of you, right? The body takes up most of you, is a beautiful way to reconnect to the feminine. The feminine is the heart center. Remember that. So the feminine is not focused on the mind and making sense of things from an intellectual standpoint. The feminine is connected to emotions, to feeling, to touch. And that is the heart of the body, those different senses. So how can you begin to really elevate your connection to touch, to scent, to emotions, right, to sound? These are really beautiful ways for you to reconnect to your feminine nature, playing music, dancing more. So your connectedness as a woman will definitely draw and attract that masculine. But again, like I'm saying about the other two previous ones, you can help that masculine as well connect to his body, not in a way that he becomes feminine, but that he is experiencing the fullness of being human again. That is what the masculine is looking for. Somebody to complement him And that is what you're able to do, right? So drawing that touch and creating that sensory experience for yourself, and then pulling your masculine partner into that. And so I want you to think about this third one around the body as how can you awaken your body through sense, through smell, through touch, through movement, and then pull the masculine into that. Create the environment that allows the masculine to come out of his head and be like, wow, like this woman is in her body, and partake in that. And not in a weird way. I don't want to be too explicit here. And one thing I'll say about music, because music is a great way to really reconnect to the body through dance and movement, but using music not to numb out. I see a lot of women using that thoughtlessly, or not really thinking about the music that they're listening to. The whole point of these senses, whether it's music, dance, touch, is to awaken the body, not to numb the body. And so be really mindful about that. If you're thinking about setting the environment with music or with smell, how can you allow the body to become alive? That's the goal, to become more alive in your womanhood and reconnect to that. Okay. And the fourth way that we're going to discuss today is through your expression. There are 3 forms of expression I tell women are a must-have if you want polarity in your relationship. Okay. They are expressing gratitude to and for your male partner, expressing desire for him, and expressing trust in his vision. Okay? Gratitude, desire, and trust. If you do those 3 things alone, you will find him thriving, him wanting to lean into his masculine energy. Let's just start with the first one around gratitude. Okay? The masculine is centered on production, right? Output, achieving, goal orientation, checking off objectives, vision, purpose. And so when you're able to give acknowledgement, express gratitude for him being in that energy, you fuel that drive. Just imagine how defeated you feel. I know if you're a mother, or you feel unacknowledged in work or in friendships or in whatever roles that you play, how defeating is it, right? When you are not thanked, when it's a thankless job, when it's a thankless thing that you're doing. So imagine how he feels if he's constantly in that mode, right? Or if you want him to be in that mode, but you're not getting that encouragement through the form of gratitude, it doesn't really have the same impact and the same fuel that it could, right? So rather than fueling through, which I'll talk about when we depolarize, but fueling through being negative or harping on what he's not doing, or expressing, what you want to be done, but you're disappointed that it's not. I know people do that. I actually want you to fuel him through your gratitude, and watch how much more, not just more in terms of the tangible, but watch how much more effort and energy that person puts in as you fuel through gratitude. Okay. The second trait that I gave you, I think it was around desire. So I'm not going to do a whole deep explanation right now on desire, because I want to do a separate video on physical touch and physical desire and all those things. But what I will say is that compared to women, men receive a lot less, right? A lot less compliments. And they also receive, and they just are physically touched less, which means that if you are in a relationship with your man, then you are the person that is able to allow him to feel desired in some way, to feel seen, to feel powerful, to feel wanted. Okay. My little guy is showing us. He heard me talking about it, and he's like, I have masculine energy. So as women, we are constantly being validated in ways, right? Whether it's through beauty or through someone's acknowledging how smart you are, or whatever the case may be. We have a lot more forms of acknowledgement than he necessarily does, right? And so how can you show him that he is desired? How can you show him that he is validated and that you are drawn to him, right? Drawn to the masculine. Your staying power is not just known, right? No one can read your mind. And so allow yourself to make what is implicitly in your heart explicit to your male partner. Allow him to be brought in and pulled into the collective experience you're having about how you feel about him. And the third piece of expression I encourage every woman is expressing trust in his vision. All right, you have your own perspective as well. Now, I'm not saying that you can't express a different opinion, but I want you to become really mindful of when you are belittling their opinion, even if it's not in like a nitpicking way or just defeating them. Sorry about that. I had to come back and get the lighting better because someone's coming in, setting, getting crazy, all the things. But one of the things that we talked about was, again, if we have the ability as women to create this really magnetic and polarized relationships where there's this attraction to one another, what that means is we also have the ability to depolarize the relationship, meaning create either a very neutral attraction where we're like roommates and yeah, there's love, but there's not that passion, or it becomes just actively very conflicted, very contentious, not the same level of adoration for one another. And so I want you to be really mindful that engaging in ways that are either unloving, right? Being really unhappy, expressing a ton of discontent, being ungrateful, whether for what that person is doing or ungrateful for your life. These are guaranteed ways to fuel a lack of polarity, to really lessen and weaken that magnet draw that you and your partner have together, right? So become really mindful when you're expressing disappointment or expressing, a lack of trust. Just, I want you to understand the impact that can have on a partner. I will always say you catch more flies with honey. And so if your goal, which is I hope what it is, right, is to have the healthiest, most loving, most successful and joyful relationship that you can, I am telling you right now, leaning into the qualities of the feminine, if it's the right man, is what will allow that to be so. When it's the wrong man, we'll talk about the challenges in that, but I want to make the assumption that you are with a partner that you know is for you, that God has chosen for you, that you feel in your bones is your man. And so how can we adopt a posture of this person does not need to be fixed, right? But you as a woman are going to take ownership for how you're showing up in the relationship and therefore add to a fruitful, loving, and adoring relationship. That is what I want for you. So I hope you enjoy these tips. Let me know how they go as you practice them, and I will see you in our next conversation. Bye.